I was listening to your interview with Jocko, and you touched on being a small kid, growing up, having your growth spurt, um, athleticism, and everything. Post injury, were you already past the point of having your self esteem like being based on your physical appearance and your athletic capabilities, or were you like, was that a tough thing, like being in the injury, not being able to do the things you were able to do?
Yeah, so I mean, when I was wounded, most of the value that I brought to the team was by virtue of my physical capabilities. I was more brawn than brain, for sure. So that was a struggle when I was going through my recovery process because like I had to get back to doing what I did, and I only knew really of one way to do it, and it was by being, physically dominant. So it took quite a bit for me to shove down the hard pill that was no matter how much you train, you're never going to be as physically dominant as you were with two legs. That's just the
Mm-hmm.
reality, man. So how do I how do I increase my value? How do I make up the gap in between what I'm going to lose physically and still be the same degree of asset to the team? And that took a bit to kind of figure out, but yeah, fortunately for me, early on, with the help of some great leadership, I was able to see that vision and invest in myself in a lot of these areas that I really wanted nothing to do with. Like all I wanted to do was be in the gym, be on the track, be in the jiu-jitsu fight house, be on the range shooting guns and driving fast and like more of the aggressive physical stuff. That's just what I enjoy doing.
Right.
But I saw that if I invest in myself in these other areas, that I think that could make up the difference. And that's what I did. And, it turned out to be successful, but it's a lot harder than, it might sound. And that's one of the reasons, Quentin, why I promote and talk so much about discipline and the importance of discipline, because I hated doing these things, but I trusted the process and I believed in what that would do for me and just, kept my head down and just got the work done.
Hmm. What do you base your self-esteem on then? Like after something like that, is it completely a build up again? Or like I said, was there already like you had a sense of self beyond your athletic and your physical capabilities? Because I think a lot of, especially dudes my age, is just in the gym and that's their personality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge part of my personality. So when a lot of that was taken away from me,
Right.
it's a tough, dark place to be for a bit, but I was able to get past that relatively quickly. And that's not to say that it was just kittens and rainbows, the whole time. There were constant moments day to day of frustration and failure and fear, and self doubt. And it's a roller coaster ride. But I was so obsessed with this one particular mission of getting back onto the team and going back to doing what I felt like was the one thing I was put on this planet to do. I was so obsessed with that's what kept me on target, and that's really what enabled me to start to do a lot of these other things that I really didn't want to be doing. And once I started to see the fruits of that labor, it was like, oh no, this can work. I think it will work. And then that just kind of starts to feed the drive a little bit more. It still sucks and it's still really hard and you're still doing a lot of different things that you don't want to do, but you can start to see the value of doing it with enough consistency. And then you slowly over time just kind of form this new version of you, which, for me, again, that nucleus was get back to the team. Like no matter what that means you are or how you do your job, that's the goal. And kind of redefining what that means for yourself was part of that process.
Hmm. Your view on discipline then, like you said, you promoted a lot. Where does it come from in your case?
Where does it come from?
Yeah, for yourself. Like what's the you were always like that, you developed it, what's your view on it?
So to say I was always disciplined would be completely and totally inaccurate. I was very much a typical young knucklehead, kid, and also not all that disciplined even as I got older and I was in college. I was an athlete. I played football. at the collegiate level, and that requires a degree of discipline. For sure, I graduated college. That requires a degree of discipline, but it really wasn't such a bedrock foundational character trait that I attribute a lot of my successes today. I didn't have it back then. I had the framework was there. I just didn't deliberately add to it all that much. Certainly for me, getting into the military, we obviously live a pretty disciplined lifestyle. So that's where that foundation that I had established really started to get built upon. You get to the teams, and there's no other way to win in that world without a degree of discipline, because whether it's in training or in operations, you're going to do a lot of different things that you don't feel like doing. And that's really the definition to me of discipline, or the simplest definition of discipline. It's doing the things that need to be done, whether you feel like it or not. And you're going to be met with countless moments of those from the very beginning all the way through even where I am now in my career. I've been doing this now almost 20 years. And on a daily basis, for the Army and for my unit, I have to do things that I don't feel like doing. And it's just the nature of life. So I think the sooner you can realize that that's not going away, you can try to find all these hacks to bypass the hard work and only do the things you feel like doing as all you want. You're going to end up right back where you are, and you're going to lose. If you only execute when you are motivated to do it or when you feel like doing it, you may get a couple wins here and there, but you're going to lose the war, period. You're going to lose to the person or to the team that is willing to do the things that need to be done, particularly when they don't feel like doing it. That's who wins. Certainly that's who wins long term. So, for me, that began really being developed once I got into the military, and I decided to see the value as that pertained to team life and operations and me personally. And then I just realized that this is a non-negotiable, and I'm going to stack more on top of it.
Where does your mind go in discipline-wise at the level you're playing at? I ran a couple marathons, nothing even similar. But it's sort of twofold for me. On the one end, it's responsibility. I feel responsibility to the people around me. My sister, for example, my sister needs a strong brother, so I'm pushing through. It's sort of the positive end of it. And then it's the negatives of people that did me wrong. I want to prove wrong in that case. For you, does your mind even go anywhere, or is it just execute and just dumbing the voices down, sort of?
Yeah, it's a great discussion, man, because there have been times, even recently, where I will leverage external entities to enable a disciplined lifestyle or disciplined behavior. Meaning, I'll use my kids. I'll use my kids constantly as a source of fuel to do the hard thing I don't feel like doing. And it's a little easier when you're doing something specifically for them, right? Like my 3-year-old wakes up in the middle of the night and I hear him screaming for me from his room. I don't feel like getting out of bed. I'm tired. It's 2:00 in the morning. My alarm's going to go off in 2.5 hours. I don't feel like getting up, but I'm a father. I have a responsibility to this kid. I'm going to get up and go do it. So that's an example of a direct correlation from an external entity that fuels disciplined behavior, but also more indirectly. He's sleep sound in his bed, no problem. My alarm clock goes off at 4:30. I got to get up and I got a workout that I really don't feel like doing right now. Well, I have an obligation to that same kid. He doesn't need me right now directly, but the work I'm about to put in the moment when I don't feel like doing it is indirectly related to him and his success and his protection and his development, that he sees and feels and knows that dad does really hard things that he doesn't feel like doing. It's easy for us to tell our kids, this is important, do this, just do what I say. But they learn more by virtue of what they feel and what they consume and what they witness. I have to live that lifestyle if I want to create another human to assimilate that behavior. So yeah, I'll use external entities to help drive that. But, for me, it's more internal than it is anything else. It almost may sound selfish, but I have to do this work right now that I don't feel like doing because it's gonna make me a better version of me. And prioritizing my own well-being and wellness, knowing that in order to provide a service to others, I need to be in the highest state of readiness and be optimized and be ready to go In order to do that, you got to put the work in when you don't want to.
I heard you say in the interview, I'm gonna, I love that one. I'm gonna make him regret for not killing me, something like that. How often does your mind go to like that place, like sort of the darkness?
Nowadays, not so much. I left the team life now a couple years ago, so I'm still active duty, but I sit at the company command level. So now I'm more of a administrator and leader and mentor and advisor to other soldiers and service members that I get to work alongside of. But certainly when I was on the teams, I would leverage that same concept. And certainly in the very beginning, when I was working to get back to the team from the very beginning, like that concept was in my mind on a daily basis. And that may sound, shallow, and, I don't know, maybe it is, but this like sense of competitiveness, layered in with like some stubbornness, probably, really for sure. But, you had your shot and you missed it. And now I'm going to make you regret not taking advantage of the opportunity when you had, because I'm going to get back there and I'm going to kick your ass. And you're gonna know that you missed an opportunity and now you're gonna pay for it. But in today's world, where I'm not really operating in that same manner, it's something that comes up to me, now and then. I usually use that example when I'm doing like a keynote presentation or I'm teaching a class to whoever I get to work with. I'll use that as an example of the power of the competitive spirit and the desire to win. Just to put some context around it. But it's not something that day to day in my today world that I kind of rely on to do hard things.
Yeah, no, I see that. What's that like, still being active duty? Like coaching guys now, is that, you like it? Or is it just, you see it as a responsibility, or you like actively enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, both. It's certainly a responsibility. There's certainly a sense of duty and obligation that I have to my fellow service members and to the country. But I also love what I get to do. It's a privilege to serve in the United States military. Nobody has the right to do that. You have to earn it, and you have to earn it every single day. And I get to do that. It's an interesting kind of paradigm, because I'm coming towards the end of my military career, assuming I retire at around the 20-year mark. And I'm also at the same time already working towards my next professional chapter and purpose of my life. So I lived kind of two professional lifestyles. The first and foremost is that of an active duty soldier. And then the second is as an entrepreneur and a business owner operator. And I love both of them. So there's only 24 hours in a day, which is a great problem to have when you love all of the things that you get to do. Sometimes you think the things that you have to do, but it's like, I get to do all this stuff, even the stuff that I don't particularly want to do in this one moment. Like, I get to do this. Serving in the uniform certainly falls into that category. So it'll be certainly bittersweet when I do hang up the uniform and I pivot into my next professional chapter at a full capacity. But yeah, man, I love what I get to do. It's a privilege. It's an honor. And as much as I am eagerly looking forward to the next chapter, it's going to be a tough transition.
Yeah, does that scare you? Because I interviewed a bunch of like SEAL guys, military guys. The transition is sort of the hard part for a lot of them. How do you view that?
It is hard. I'll use my wife as an example. She's also active duty. She's been in special operations longer than me. She's been serving 23 years now, and she has endless opportunities. And, she's just started recently the process of retiring. It'll take her a good 8, 9, 12 months to officially kind of get out and become a civilian. But she's got endless opportunities, countless, for additional government service, in the private sector, contracting, starting her own business. Like, she can do anything. And I'm biased because she's my wife and I get to see how amazing of a human she is. But even just objectively speaking, like, she's a unicorn. She's an absolute weapon and can do whatever she wants. And she's getting out under her own terms. So ending her career when she chooses, with limitless options on what to go to next. And even despite that, being alongside her while she's going through this journey, literally right now as you and I are having this conversation, it's still really hard for her. So imagine the circumstance where you've got a service member who's leaving under any other type of condition, whether they're being forced out like medically, or they make a bad decision and their career all of a sudden is coming to an end, or they decide they want to retire, but they also have no idea what they even might want to do after they're no longer in the uniform. That it's hard. So it's hard even when all of the stars are kind of aligned. So then, of course, it could be seen as even more difficult when some of those stars are unknown. So, yeah, it's scary and it's challenging no matter who you are, I would say. And, for me, even though I already know what my next purpose is, because I'm doing it right now, at a smaller scale, but I'm doing it right now. I feel extremely confident that by the time I hang up the uniform, I'm going to have a solid foundation and some momentum and some great people around me to really take a shot at this business thing. Mm-hmm. But I also know that it will be bittersweet and it will be hard. But at the same time, I'm also looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can imagine. You had goals coming in to the military. You feel like you achieved those?
There's a long list of goals. Certainly when you come in, mm-hmm. and whether you're looking at different schools or qualifications, or I want to deploy to like this particular area, or I want to experience like that type of combat operation. I mean, you kind of generate this really long list. Certainly even early on and really throughout your career, these kind of aspirations. And we tend to be, particularly in special operations, but it extends beyond that as well, but very goal-oriented individuals where we're looking at the next objective or a series of them, and we're constantly pursuing that. And it's not long after you reach that goal, you complete it, that you're already looking at the next one. And it just keeps going and going and going. So that list of desired goals doesn't really end much. So I'm sure that there will be things on the table that once I do hang up the uniform and look back and go, hey man, it would have been cool if I got a chance to do that or experience this. But I've had a very fulfilling, very well-rounded, diverse career. One of the upsides of being a Green Beret, we get sent into a lot of different operational environments, and we're expected to be proficient in a lot of different skills. So from the movie style, like high octane, in your face gunfight, explosions stuff, to the other end of the spectrum where we're in a much more permissive environment, wearing plain clothes and able to just like go drive around and walk around and do the things we need to do, and kind of everything in between. So I feel quite fulfilled. I'm sure there will be things that pop up where I'm like, oh man, I didn't get a chance to do that. But I feel quite fulfilled with the things that I've done to this point.
Yeah. Like business wise, coming into it, is there stuff that challenges you? Like maybe, like the continuous pressure of it, or you feel like you've seen it all in your past career?
Oh man, when it comes to business, you're talking like entrepreneurship business, like my business. Yeah. Right. Okay. I mean, I laugh because there's a reason why the overwhelming majority of startups and small businesses they fail, and it's really hard.
What's hard about
one
it?
I was gonna say, like one of the harder aspects of it, it's not even so much like learning the language or what's a P&L, like the terminology and these like businessy things. If you didn't go to get your MBA, you haven't been like formally trained in this stuff. Like you can learn that stuff. It's easy. Like the internet and AI and YouTube has made it. You can teach yourself just about anything in today's world with enough time and investment and caring about learning it. So that's not so much. That's hard in itself. But one of the things that sticks out to me with entrepreneurship, man, is from the beginning, you've like no idea what you're doing, and it's very like low risk, and there's almost no expectation because it's just you. And regardless of what you're doing, selling a product, providing a service, it's just you. You're functioning out of like a guest bedroom or a closet or your garage or your like kitchen, and you're just like figuring it out, man. And like things work, things don't work, and it's like it's easy. It's not easy, but the hits don't hurt quite as much because the expectation's very, very low. You're just like learning all the things you don't know yet. It's one of the greater challenges is once you start to get a little bit of momentum You start to get some wins, right? You start selling some things. You start booking some clients. You start like bringing in some like cash, like some income and some revenues coming in. You're like, oh man, this is like a thing. I mean, I think I got this kind of figured out, and this worked and got it. And you almost set this new bar of expectation that this is just the way it's going to continue, like up and to the right on a linear path, which is of course impossible. It doesn't happen in fitness, in business, in you're developing your intellect, in relationships. Like up and to the right on a line does not happen. Like life goes up, down, sideways, and spins around in circles. I think generally you want things to be trending in that direction, but there's going to be an enormous amount of setbacks no matter what you're trying to do. And in business, like you get that new kind of degree of this is the way it's going to be. And then you get kicked in the balls and you're like right back at square one, or you're worse off than you were on day one. And like, it's that moment right there. Like that's when the game is just now starting. That's the beginning of the game. And it's usually when most begin to off ramp. And it's like, I didn't have it. I thought I did. I didn't have the right time. I didn't have any luck. I didn't think this through. I didn't read enough books. I didn't listen to enough podcasts on like business, and like all these like reasons start to come up as to why you quote unquote failed, even though that's just the start of the game. Like the game literally that was kickoff. And now we're going to see if you really want to do this. Like how bad do you want it? And that cycle just continues. It's like, I heard Alex Hormozi describe this great. I think he quoted Elon Musk where he's like, entrepreneurship is like staring into the abyss while chewing on broken glass. And it's just such an accurate depiction of what it is. Like you're literally staring into the unknown. I have no idea where this is going, and I barely know like what the fuck I'm doing. And during that scary like sense of the unknown, you're just getting your ass kicked on a daily basis. So what I promote quite a bit when it comes to like veterans and like military individuals going into business, it's like we are positioned quite in a great place to make this work, because just the resilience and the mental toughness that is essential for entrepreneurship, we have that through some very unique experiences that are unlike 99% of the people on the planet. So leverage that. Know going in, it's still going to be really difficult. But if you stick to it enough and you continue to be adaptable and learn from the failures, then anyone can do it.
I had this show since I was, I believe, 15, and the goal has always been to like start my own company, do I have like an entrepreneurial family. So I started like I said, running marathons, doing an Ironman, all that kind of stuff to like get the mental down. I'm like, okay, I got the discipline down, I got the communication down. Like, okay, I'm ready to do it. And then now coming out of law school and sort of my first few steps in business career, just like the pressure of it is like nothing I could have trained for. it's something totally else. Yeah.
And that pressure, man. I mean, I'll tell you, when it's just you and the pressure's all about you, that's nothing compared to when you start bringing on team members and partners and investors and employees, and they've got families. Like, to me, as a CEO of a company, which is still relatively small, we've got a good like 50 or so, 60 people that are part of what we're doing here in different degrees. The pressure, as you talk about, for me as the leader of this thing, almost all of it comes by virtue of them. And like you really want to do right by the people who believe in you and who believe in the vision and are willing to invest themselves and their money sometimes and their time and energy and putting food on the table and keeping a roof over their head. Like when I'm thinking about like bigger strategic decisions, like those are the ones that are coming into the back of my mind. Like, hey man, like you really don't want to get this one wrong, because there's a lot of people depending on like the choice you make right now. And it's when, it doesn't go right, which happens. Like we're going to make choices and then things don't play out. And you're like, that's when it hits me. I'm like, shit. Okay. But so it's scary and the pressure's there, but I get to experience this pressure. I mean, I put myself into this position on purpose. I show up to do that kind of work every day. Like I get to feel that. And I think when you keep your values at the forefront of your mind, couple that with that resilience and that competitive nature, and you just let that drive you, you can rebound from those things. And the reason why those people are there with you from the beginning or at any point, they see that, they feel that, they know that you're thinking about them and you care about them genuinely. And so when things don't go right and they feel an effect from that, to whatever degree it is, they can still believe in you and still want to be on the journey with you. But to summarize, man, that pressure comes from the team. And I would argue with most CEOs, the bigger the company gets, or really any leader, right? The CEO being kind of the typical individual at the head of the ship. That's a huge reason as to like why they make the money they make. It's not so much about the technical thing that they do. It's the absorption of the stress. It's the absorption of the pressure. And it's too much for most to take, because you do have to have kind of an X factor to be able to take that on and look at that storm in the face with all these people you care about, their lives to one degree or another, depending on what you do right now. Few can do it, even less can do it at that scale, which, is really what is the differentiator, I think, in a lot of great leaders versus those that don't quite make it.
You sort of adapt to it. How do you feel about it now? Like being into the business for a little longer than just a startup.
Yeah, man. It's like learning how to build the plane while it's in flight. And things are falling apart, and you put it back together, and you try to keep the wings level, and then get a little altitude when you can, and then this thing snaps and it starts to take a nosedive, and that first instinct is to just panic, and then you just reset and start thinking objectively and logically, and around you go. I heard someone talk on this. I can't remember who it was in an interview, and he said when it comes to entrepreneurship or business, he goes, no one knows what they're doing. Some people just do it anyway. And it's just a very concise way of wrapping that up, where you look at an individual, regardless of their successes or whatever metrics you want to use to determine that they're winning, and think man, they got it all figured out. This person's got it all figured out, making all the right moves, can't miss, batting 1,000. I just want to be like that. When in reality, one, that individual is making mistakes constantly, seeing the opportunity that comes by getting things wrong, because that's when they can learn and extract some knowledge and some wisdom. But they also almost certainly rarely actually know what they're doing, but they're just doing it anyway. They're willing to take the risk and put themselves out there and, get through it when it doesn't play out in their favor.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, because I've talked about this with a lot of people. Sort of coming up at 21, my age, it's like a totally different subject, but sort of being the real you, I guess is a way to describe it. I have a tendency to throw up a mask, I go into whatever situation, and I sort of act the way I expect people want me to act. What's your view on that? Being yourself, authenticity, vulnerability. Because you seem to have that one down. So,
yeah, man, very common. Actually, the norm, I would argue, especially with young people. You just described me to a T. For a lot of my life, even all the way up through when I was in college, even older than you, I was still the kind of that chameleon mentality, where I'm just going to try to formulate myself around this social group so that I can fit in. And I can't tell you how many times I've redefined even my interests based off of a need to be accepted socially. This group looks like they may take me in, and they're really into comic books, so I'm going to make comic books my favorite thing in the world. I don't give a real shit about comics really at all, but I'm going to make it my favorite thing. I'm going to buy them, I'm going to read them, I'm going to talk about them. Or I want to be more with the jocks, so football and wrestling, and that's my thing. I'm going to go all in. And it's all based on social acceptance. And I think it's important for especially young people to know that that's by design. That's biology that is guiding that on purpose. It's rooted in our survival, really. Human beings are pack animals by design. This is coded into our genetics and our DNA. And there's a very simple reason as to why, because thousands of years ago, you had a much higher likelihood of survival when the saber-toothed tiger showed up, when it was you plus 100 versus just you by yourself. That's it. It's really that simple. And whether that's consciously or subconsciously, we are influenced by others to be accepted socially. So it's completely and totally expected. Evolving beyond that to become more comfortable with your authentic self takes time. And like, there's not a whole lot you can do to speed up experience. Experience and time are joined. You have to go through it to then experience it, to then learn from it. So to try to get a 21-year-old or a 15-year-old to just like not give a shit what anybody thinks about them is essentially impossible. Right? You're gonna care what other people think because you're supposed to. That's part of the point, is so that you can find your crew, find a circle or a tribe that accepts you, and then that enables confidence and capability and capacity, and now you can kind of begin to operate in whatever direction you're going in, assuming it's real or it's not. So it's important to just know who you're or what you're fighting with that, and it's yourself, and it's on purpose. So don't beat yourself up because you find yourself doing that, because it's totally normal. Over time, I think it's somewhat natural. When depends on the individual, where you do kind of grow into your authentic self, and you've got more internal confidence that's built up, where it's not that you don't need other people around you, because we are still pack animals for sure, but you're more confident in your own skin. And by virtue of that, you will gravitate towards people that are more like you as your authentic you. And it just takes time, man. So it took me, into my mid 20s to find that. I found it once I got into the military, and it was like, cool, like these are my people, and this is kind of where I want to live and thrive and operate. But it takes time. So know that going in. Trying to rush it probably isn't going to work. It's much easier said than done to say, like, block out the noise and fuck everybody and just do you. Like that, there's a interesting Instagram caption, but it's also not really rooted in reality. The truth is you're probably going to continue to do that. And that's okay, because also there's a value in curiosity and just like trying new things. And like, yeah, you know what? Like, I really wasn't into comic books, but like, let me find out if that's interest to me. And you do it and you're like, yeah, that's really not my thing. And you pivot and move. It's the evolution of growth, man. So for you, Quentin, I think it's impressive that you're even aware of that at 21. I wasn't at that age at all. Still very much a young, dumb, naive knucklehead making a lot of really poor decisions. So just the fact that you're even aware that that's a thing for anybody, not to mention yourself, speaks quite a bit to you and your maturity.
No, I appreciate that. At a while back, I was sitting down. I'm like, I have no idea what music I even like. Like, it's just whatever everyone else was listening to, I was listening to. And since then, I've been thinking about it and talking about it. But like you said, like speeding up is going to be, it takes time. No, interesting one. Appreciate that one. Leadership, as simple of a question as it is, what makes a good leader? I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Oof. Leadership is a massive genre, man. It's an easy term to throw around,
right.
But there's a science and there's an art form, to that. It's an area that I teach, and my team teaches, and within different groups and organizations. It's a big lift. At its simplest of terms, I would say leadership is synonymous with influence. If I had to boil it down to a single word, like that's it. And then, influence is one's ability to affect a change in thought or behavior in another. Like that's what influence means. And you can start to continue to pull on those threads. But as you do that, the other words that come to mind when it comes to leadership is inspire. So to be able to inspire people. And now you're really talking about extracting an emotional response out of somebody, making someone feel a certain way, which then drives a change in behavior or thought, but it's based on emotions, is inspiration. Enabling other people, actually providing others with resources, a sense of authority to make decisions and make choices, empowering others as well. So those like buzzwords come to mind to me for what leadership is. But what I can tell you, and I'll use kind of my 3 laws of leadership that I typically kick off most classes or courses or engagements with, it's leadership is a choice, period. And there's a massive difference between leadership and leadership positions. And those are 2 totally different things. What we would like to have happen is every leadership position is filled by a leader, but that's not always the case. You have to decide to be a leader. And it doesn't matter what your rank or your title, your position or your salary or pay grade or tenure, like none of that makes a difference. You just wake up and you decide, I'm going to be a leader. I have been led by 4-star generals and 16-year-old local interpreters from said country and everything in between. I've been led by all these types of people. So it's about making the decision to be a leader. So leadership is a choice. Leadership is a skill is number 2. I was way late to the game in realizing that truth. My thought prior was that leadership was something you were either born with or not. More like a talent, like an inherent, organic, natural capability was leadership. And certainly talent exists, and some people are more charismatic and more outgoing, and they can foster a group. They're better communicators. So talent exists, but leadership is a skill. And like any skill, if you're not deliberately training on that skill, it's going to atrophy at some point. Like if you want to get good at shooting free throws, you need to shoot a whole shitload of free throws on purpose. Purposeful practice, being very deliberate about what am I doing right now, my mechanics, my hand placement, my follow through. Like leadership is the same thing. And most, I would say, go into it thinking that, well, I've been around for a long time, so I'm just going to automatically be a good leader. And that's a mistake. If you're not training on it, it's a skill like any other skill, and it is perishable. And then the last one is leadership is a service. There's a huge difference between being a leader and being a boss, or being a leader and being a manager. These are different things. Leadership is a service. You serve those that you lead. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of the people in your charge. And that's a very slight difference in words, but words mean things, and that's an important difference. Leadership is a service. You serve those that you get to lead. I think if you go into leadership with those 3 tenets in the forefront of your mind, leadership is a choice, leadership is a skill, and leadership is a service, then I think you are miles ahead of most, and you're on a great trajectory to actually do that effectively.
Who was an inspiration for you on that front? Who sticks out?
Oh, man. I'll tell you one that sticks out, and I mentioned early on in this conversation, Quentin, the hard truth when I was in the hospital of realizing that I would never be as physically dominant as I was with 2 legs. And a key individual that helped me reframe how I would go about becoming an asset back to the team was General Charles Cleveland, who at the time was the United States Army Special Operations Command commander, so a 3-star general. And I was in the hospital. I'd been there maybe 3 or 4 months. So I'm making progress. I'm still like bedridden and still pretty early on, going through surgeries. And normally when a general would show up in a scenario like that, there'd be like an advanced team of like staff minions that would show up before, and they'd like set the stage and like get all like the coins ready and the awards and like make the whole thing look all pretty and ready for photographs and whatnot. And then the general would walk in. And there's nothing really, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Like it's just to create efficiency, because generals have enormously busy schedules. On this particular day, this just random older dude just like walked in my room in civilian clothes and just like walked up to me and it was just like, "Hey Nick, how you doing?" I had no idea who this guy was. And eventually he introduces himself and I'm like, "Oh man, I definitely didn't know you were you." And the short version, man, is he ends up feeding me with some information. He hands me some written material that kind of outlined his vision as the USASOC commander for where Army Special Operations was going over the next decade. And it highlighted all these different skills and needs for the organization that started to jump out at me. And those were the things I invested myself in. The things that I hated and didn't want to do. It was by virtue of General Cleveland showing up and sharing this with me. It was like a 7-minute interaction that he and I had. And then he left. And that was it. Quick and done. Fast forward 10 years. Okay. So this is just last year. Okay. So I was in the hospital in 2013. He visited me then. 2023. So a year ago from today. I'm at an event in DC and General Cleveland was there. He'd recently retired. He was getting an award. And during this event, I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, sir, congratulations, whatever." And he's like, "Hey, man, great to see you. See your stuff. Love what you're doing, blah, blah, blah." We're just kind of bullshitting. And I said, "Hey, man, I got to ask you this question." I'm like, "Do you remember when you visited me in the hospital 10 years ago?" He goes, "Yeah." Instantly responds. He's like, "Yeah, absolutely." I'm like, "You walked in unannounced, civilian clothes, just," and he's like, "Right." I'm like, "You gave me a document and you kind of outlined your vision for the future and you asked me for my feedback. And do you remember this?" He's like, "Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about." And I'm like, "Did you actually think that I would respond to you and give you some feedback? I mean, I'm in and out of surgery. I'm on anesthesia. I'm on ketamine. Like, I'm a train wreck in the hospital. And you give me this stuff. And you're like, 'Let me know your thoughts.' And then you walked out of my room." He's like, "Right." I'm like, "Did you actually think I would do that?" And he immediately goes, No, I didn't expect to hear from you." And then I said, "Well, why did you do that?" And he goes, "Because I needed to get your head back in the game." And I was like, in that one moment, I'm like, this right here is maybe the greatest example of what leadership is. You got a 3-star general who's got thousands of people within his command. He doesn't know Nick Lavery at all. I'm like a number on a spreadsheet somewhere. That's it. But he took enough time to talk to those that did know me to get an idea of who I was very quickly and efficiently. Who is this guy? Where do you think his head is right now? Got some information from his subordinate leaders and then took action. It was a 7-minute investment of this guy's life, and it completely and totally changed the trajectory of where I was going. Had it not been for that, who knows where I am today? You and I probably aren't having this conversation. But it's those like unknown, noticed moments where leaders invest in their people because they genuinely care and they take the time and energy to do it. That creates a trickle, a second and third order effect in that person's life, which then spreads laterally across everyone that they touch. So he's one that tends to jump to mind when I think of great leaders. It's not him commanding me to storm a beachhead or take a hilltop in a tactical environment. It's that scenario where he completely and totally changed the trajectory of my entire life.
Yeah, and understanding what you needed. That's quite something. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I love that, man. Closing strategy. I always love that one. How are you approaching business right now from a strategic standpoint? Lessons you took from the military. Is it like I asked another guy this, and he was like, "We plan everything, every single scenario. It's like what if, and then counter plans to that." How do you approach that business-wise? Because you can't plan for anything, I assume.
No, you can't.
How do you see that?
Trying to plan for every what if, and you will forever remain in planning mode. At some point, you got to actually go. And in fact, in military, when we do our planning before either a massive like campaign plan or like a single tactical operation, we set a limit, like an actual time limit on how much time we will spend on investing in contingency planning, which is those what if questions. Well, if this happens and this, if this happens and this, we cut that off at a certain point. Like, this is what we got, and now it's time to go to work, because that you will never account for everything. So that's a massive mistake in military operations, in life, in your relationships. Like, if you're walking into a difficult discussion with your spouse and you want to try to plan for every single what if she says this, what if I say that, you will forever just be sitting in your closet trying to game plan something that you will never have the answers. Like, at some point you got to go and execute, and then start to be mobile and flexible and start making decisions and assessing what's going on in real time. So to take that approach in business is something that I do not do. An enormous amount of contingency planning. In fact, I say there's like minimal contingency planning. I've been more about making faster decisions than extremely highly analyzed decisions. Most of the decisions I make are done pretty quick because I've got just a barrage of them that are coming in every single day as like the CEO. And yeah, I've got an amazing team, but I still wear a lot of hats. Like, I mean, I'm 4 years into this thing, so I'm wearing a lot of different hats. So if I sit there and try to do this paralysis by analysis for every single decision I need to make, like, I will eventually be completely and totally underwater, and it's not going to even matter if that decision was perfect because I'm too far behind for it to make a single difference. So being able to move quick and efficiently, kind of trust in your gut a little bit, knowing that you're going to get a bunch of them wrong anyway. So if I'm looking to bat like 65%, 70% here, like I'm going to swing and miss. Out of the 10 decisions I make today, I'm going to swing and miss on 3, maybe 4 of them. You have to know that and be okay with that. I got 10 balls in the air. I'm going to drop 3 today. That's okay. In fact, I'm going to learn why I dropped it, and then I'm going to pick it back up and I'm going to put it back into the game. So my strategy to business as it's pertained to the military and what I've taken over is having a clear intent. What is the intent? It can get easy in business or in life to just start executing. You're just doing a lot of different things, but there's a massive difference between doing and making progress. Like, to use the fitness analogy, you're a runner. Like, you can get on a treadmill and you can run 1,000 miles and you haven't moved at all. Like, you're stagnant. You're still in your garage or in the gym, whatever. There's a difference between doing and making progress. Having a clear intent on what is it I'm trying to do right now, and then assimilating that to different strategic or tactical objectives that are in line with that. Now you've got something to focus in on. And then boom, like I'm going to work on this right now. Once I hit that milestone, then the next one comes after that. The next one comes after that. I can't advance this line till I get some traction in this line. So from a strategic perspective, that's been really my approach. And then more from a tactical perspective, it's about investing in people. That I just got out of a meeting with someone that looks like we're going to onboard here in the next couple of weeks, or maybe a month or so. And I was just telling them the same thing. Like, my approach has been to invest in people, position people into a place based off their current skill set to a degree, but more so about their passion and their potential. Like, what drives you, right? What would make you get up tomorrow morning eager to go to work? That's what I want to develop within you. And we can take that into 100 different directions. And I'm willing to invest in that person and take insane losses of my time, our money, losing members or followers. Or like, I will take those losses all day for the investment in you because I believe in you and your potential. And I think when you operate that way, knowing it's going to come with some costs, that's how you build a solid team. People that are not only empowered and enabled, but they're fired the fuck up to like go to work. That's who wins, I believe, over time. And there's no such thing as an investment without costs, man. It's easy to say, like, I'm going to invest in this thing or this person, but you need to know going in, it's going to come with some costs. Like, I don't just get 12 shares of Google stock. I have to buy it. So, like, I no longer have the $10,000 that I would have had to go buy a bunch of Jordans. Like, that's gone. That cost is gone. Why would I do that? Which hurts. Like, the 10 grand would be nice to have. I don't have it anymore. But why do it? Well, because I believe that in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, that 1,000 is going to be 5. And like, it's a very simple concept. You're just taking it and applying it to people. So I'd say those would be kind of my 2 ways of operating at level. Having a clearly defined intent with some kind of an approach, very simple approach to meeting that intent over time. And then invest in people, knowing it's going to come with some costs. But I believe that's how you build a sound team. And I know that in business, it's the strong team that wins.
Yeah. What do you look for in new guys that you onboard? Qualities that they, like, you can develop, maybe.
I'm not sure that there's a quality that you can't develop. Certainly there's some that are more important than others, or I'd say more difficult than others to develop. If I were to put, a label on what I'm looking for in a person, it's attributes like integrity, humility. Those 2 come to mind. I mean, with enough desire, discipline can happen. If you become obsessed with something, discipline will form almost organically because you need to do this. I may not feel like getting out of bed right now, but I need to have a 6-pack or like whatever the thing is. So I'm going to do that. But I think when you fuel a passion, some of these other character traits can start to come on board, especially with a little bit of guidance. I'm more looking at the values of the individual. I want to know about you. When things get hard, are you going to take the hard right over the easy wrong? Or are you going to dig in and do the right thing and be a good person? Because that's a lot more difficult to teach. Someone's character is a lot more difficult to teach than their their daily schedule and like what food they eat or like when they go to the gym. That's way easier to instill in another person than someone's character. So you got a good person who's value driven with a degree of integrity and humility. So we can stack technical and tactical skills on top of that all day long, and we're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I love that. Tell me about what you guys are building on at the company.
Say that again, Quentin.
What you guys are building on at the company? What are you doing there?
Well, Precision Components is the name of our company. It's training and consulting. So we do a lot of work within leadership, resilience, mindset, performance wellness, from like keynote presentations and inspirational talks to like full-blown multi-day training workshops. So that's the macro, but then we also have our machine brand, which is our B2C entity, so direct to consumer with services and products to enable personal development. So we live in the personal development space and in the collective team development space. One of the more recent adds to that is our virtually based coaching and community platform called The Forge. And it's not a revolutionary concept. There's a lot of organizations or people out there that have these membership based platforms to operate off of. What I'd say makes The Forge unique is the diverse package of subject matter experts that we have that are all in there as coaches and advisors. And it's a really diverse crew where we've got some of the ones you would probably expect from a guy like me, like strength and conditioning, coaching and programming, and dietitians, physical therapists. Like the physical stuff is what you may expect. And we have all these assets to build in the physical domain of a human's physical human performance capability. But then we've got, functional medicine practitioners, breath work specialists, financial advisors. We've really kind of taken this whole of person approach to development. And we've got over now 24 industry leader experts in all these different fields that our members get to learn from on a daily basis. And that doesn't happen, Quentin, without what I've been talking about, surrounding yourself with great people that are aligned on a shared vision and a shared understanding, that are highly selfless in nature, and that they truly get genuine fulfillment in service to others. So by looking at an individual and their integrity and their values and like what drives you is what we look at when we onboard new coaches and advisors and SMEs onto the team. And I'm just so blessed to have been able to get connected with such an amazing crew that are changing lives on a daily basis. I'm in there 2-3 times a day answering questions and providing guidance and doing live virtual sessions, but it's really by virtue of the team that has created that into the animal that it has already grown into. And we're just getting started, man. So we'll see.
Yeah, what's the vision with it? Where are you taking it? What's the vision?
We're going to disrupt the influence and impact world. Leaders of impact is kind of my vision statement. And, I think, and I'm not anti-social media. I'm not anti-internet. I use both of those tools every single day. There's also been an obvious development of a lot of what I would say is nonsense and contrarians that are pushing complete and total nonsense in order to manipulate others. Manipulation and influence. The only difference between what those two things are is who benefits from this. With influence, the benefit is to the individual and the team. With manipulation, the benefit is to the one who's doing the manipulation. So slight difference. And I think there's a lot of that out there. And based off of really captivating marketing, there's a lot of people that are striving for legitimate, authentic knowledge, that are willing to invest in themselves to become the best version that they possibly can be on this short game of life that we get to live, and are being manipulated into some poor directions. And so our mission is to really standardize that and raise the bar for both organizations and for individuals with authentic, real, proven, and credible value to enable others to be the best version of themselves and to enable other teams and organizations to become the absolute greats.
Yeah, I love that. You believe in legacy at all?
Man, I laugh because I'll tell you, brother, my interpretation of legacy for most of my life, actually up until about 8 years ago, almost to the day, was a very self-centered, egotistical, kind of shallow concept to be even thinking about. Like the notion that I'm going to make choices today so that after I'm dead, there's some shrine of me somewhere where people are lighting candles and like coming up and praying to the, to me as a dead person. That seemed to be, a shitty way to live, an unauthentic way to live. But it was right around the time when I knew I was going to be a father. So we were pregnant with my oldest. And that changed for me almost in an instant, because I realized, at least for me, it wasn't about random people glorifying me after I'm dead. It's about the impact that you leave on your loved ones. And knowing I was going to become a dad was what sparked that for me. No, it's not self-centered. It's not egotistical. It's about being a good person and creating a positive impact on those you care about and those that depend on you. That's legacy to me. And that can extend beyond, children, your children, that you can have that same effect with others. So I think it takes a minute for legacy to be seen in that light. But for me, once I did, it really was a powerful moment where it only further incentivized the need to operate as a good human and be morally and value driven. Because you can stack up wins all day long. You can continue to summit the mountain over and over and over again. But if you're doing it as a piece of shit, if you're doing it as a liar and as a facade and as a scumbag, then at the end of the day, what difference does it really make? To me, not so much. A sense of purpose is about being a part of something bigger than yourself that creates an impact on others. And that's a huge component to me as I make choices day to day in business, as a soldier, as a husband, as a father, as an individual. So I use that term now as a reminder of it's going to get hard. The easier option is going to be right in front of you to cut some corners and justify that all day long. But if you remain firm in being a person of integrity and being a person that stands behind what they say and acts on what they speak on, it may be more difficult. In fact, it almost certainly will be more difficult, but it is the right way to go.